The words didn't feel like a criticism in the moment. They felt like a diagnosis, a terminal one. I was sitting in an office that cost more than my entire childhood home. Hell, more than my entire childhood neighborhood. The air so clean and recycled through HEPA filters and ionizers that it felt like it had no oxygen left in it for dreams, only for bottom lines and quarterly earnings. The leather chair beneath me was the kind that conforms to your body, ergonomically designed for maximum comfort. Yet I had never felt more uncomfortable in my life. Every fiber of that $12,000 chair seemed to be whispering, "Asterisk, you don't belong here." Asterisk, he was a man I had revered, a titan, a king of a castle I desperately wanted entry to. Arthur Pemberton. The name alone carried weight in Silicon Valley and beyond. Forbes had called him the Oracle of Innovation. TechCrunch referred to him as the man who sees tomorrow. He had mentored 3 unicorn founders, sat on the boards of companies whose names were verbs, and his TED Talk had 47 million views. He was my mentor, or he was supposed to be. I had won a competition, the Innovators Under 25 Fellowship, and he was my prize. 6 months of mentorship with a man who supposedly could turn raw potential into realized destiny, and I, fresh from university, my undergraduate degree in philosophy still warm in my hands, my mind buzzing with Spinoza's ethics and the architecture of neural networks, my nights spent in the liminal space between Wittgenstein's language games and Python's syntax trees, believed I was bringing him a new kind of fire, not the stolen fire of Prometheus, but a fire I had kindled myself in the forge of 2 disciplines that rarely spoke to each other: continental philosophy and computational science. I had spent my final year at university living in what my roommate called beautiful madness. While others were interviewing for consulting positions and banking jobs, I was in the library until security kicked me out, then in all-night diners, surrounded by books with titles like Asterisk Being and Time Asterisk and Asterisk Artificial Intelligence. A modern approach asterisk, building bridges between worlds that most people kept carefully separated. My professors didn't know what to make of me. The philosophy department thought I was wasting my considerable theoretical talents on mere engineering. The computer science department thought I was overcomplicating simple problems with unnecessary abstractions. But I saw something they didn't, or rather, I saw the absence of something crucial. Every AI system I studied was phenomenally good at performing tasks, but had no comprehension of the asterisk meaning asterisk of those tasks. They were syntactic engines without semantic understanding. They were, in Searle's famous formulation, Chinese rooms, manipulating symbols according to rules without any understanding of what those symbols meant. And this wasn't just a theoretical problem. It was an existential one. We were building intelligences that could optimize for any goal we gave them, but had no framework for understanding whether those goals were worth pursuing, whether they aligned with human flourishing, whether they were, in any meaningful sense, good asterisk. So I built my framework. I called it ethiaxiological ethics through holistic epistemological reasoning. The acronym was admittedly a bit forced, but the substance was sound. It wasn't just an idea. It was a synthesis. A framework that used philosophical first principles to re-engineer how artificial intelligence could understand human intention. I had poured my soul into it, mapping the ethics of Aristotle's virtue theory onto code architectures, the phenomenology of Husserl's intentionality onto user interfaces, the deontological imperatives of Kant onto decision-making algorithms, and the utilitarian calculus of Mill onto optimization functions. I had created a metaethical layer that could sit atop any AI system and provide it with something unprecedented, a genuine framework for understanding not just what humans wanted, but what humans should want, what would lead to their eudaimonia, their flourishing. The document I had prepared for Arthur was 347 pages. It included formal logical proofs, code samples, philosophical argumentation, user studies I had conducted with volunteers, simulations I had run, and projections for how this could be implemented at scale. I had worked on it for 18 months, sleeping an average of 4 hours a night, sustained by coffee and the unshakable conviction that I was onto something that mattered, something that could shift the trajectory of how humanity and artificial intelligence would coexist. I thought he would see the beauty in it, the sheer, audacious scope of trying to build a machine that didn't just compute, but comprehended. I thought he would see past the surface complexity to the elegant simplicity underneath. Give AI a philosophy, and you give it a compass. Give it a compass, and you can trust it to navigate. He listened. Or rather, he performed the act of listening with the kind of practiced attention that powerful men develop. A performance so polished that it takes you several minutes to realize that while his eyes are on you, his mind has already left the building. His eyes scanned the lines of my proposal, the executive summary I had agonized over for weeks, trying to compress 18 months of work into 5 pages that could capture imagination while demonstrating rigor. His fingers drummed on the mahogany desk, that unconscious rhythm that I would later recognize as his tell, the sign that he had already made up his mind and was simply waiting for a socially appropriate moment to deliver his verdict. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the entire Bay Area sprawling out like a circuit board. All those little lights representing dreams and ambitions, and the frantic energy of people trying to build the future. From this height it all looked so manageable, so orderly. But I knew that down there in those streets, in those garages and coffee shops and cramped apartments, the future was actually messy and chaotic and uncertain. The view from this office was a lie, a beautiful lie that suggested success was clean and inevitable. When he finally looked up, it was with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of all the impractical, starry-eyed children he'd had to set straight over the years. It was a sigh that said, "Asterisk, here we go again." Asterisk, it was a sigh that contained within it an entire philosophy of resigned superiority. The world, you of someone who had seen 1,000 pitches and could spot the impractical ones in the first 30 seconds. "Eloise," he said, and my name sounded like a synonym for naive. Not the beautiful, classical Eloise of Abelard's letters, not the Eloise who was a brilliant scholar in her own right, but a diminished version, a child, the Eloise who needed to be taught the ways of the real world. It's brilliant, truly. The intellectual rigor is impressive, and there it was, the compliment that preceded the execution. I had heard enough rejection to recognize this pattern, the setup, the softening. The praise that was really just a cushion for the blow. He paused, letting the but hang in the sterile air between us like Damocles' sword. I could feel it coming. I wanted to stand up, to gather my papers, to spare us both the indignity of what came next. But I was frozen, held in place by the same force that keeps you watching a car crash, the horrible fascination of seeing your dreams dismantled in real time. But you have to be realistic. The market doesn't care about Spinoza. Investors aren't interested in funding a philosophy seminar, He gestured dismissively at my life's work, at the 347 pages that represented every ounce of my intellectual and creative energy. A gesture that somehow managed to erase 18 months in a single movement of his hand. This is a beautiful castle in the sky, magnificent even, but castles in the sky have a fundamental problem, Eloise. No one can live in them. You need to plant your feet on the ground. I felt something crack inside me, not a clean break, but a compound fracture, the kind where the bone splinters in multiple directions. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thinner. His voice continued, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. Then came the line that became the fossil upon which my entire future was built. The line that I would turn over in my mind 10,000 times in the years that followed, examining it from every angle, extracting from it every possible meaning and implication. He leaned forward, adopting a posture of confidential, hard, one wisdom. The way a doctor might lean forward to deliver news about a condition that's manageable, but chronic. I'm telling you this because I like you, because I see your potential. You're one of the smartest people I've met this year. But smart isn't enough. You need to be strategic. He paused, and I could see him choosing his next words carefully, crafting them for maximum impact. Stop dreaming so big. Start small. Get a job in a good firm. I can make some calls, get you into Google, maybe DeepMind if you want to stay in the AI space. Learn the ropes. Understand how things actually work in the industry. Pay your dues. Learn the language of business, not just the language of philosophy. Maybe in 20 years, if you still care about this, if this isn't just youthful idealism, you can revisit this. By then, you'll have the resources, the network, the credibility to maybe get something like this off the ground. Stop dreaming so big. 4 words, 16 letters, but they contained within them an entire world. You, a complete philosophy of human potential and its limitations. They weren't shouted or snarled. They were offered gently, like medicine. That was what made them so insidious. The psychological violence of that statement isn't in its cruelty, but in its seductive reasonableness. It's not a shout. It's a whisper that slithers into your ear and coils around your brainstem like a parasite. It doesn't attack you, it becomes you. It aligns itself with every latent insecurity, every middle of. Then I doubt you've ever had every moment of imposter syndrome, every time you wondered if you were deluding yourself. It dresses itself up as pragmatism, as wisdom, as the necessary medicine for the disease of ambition. It sounds like common sense. It sounds like what a friend would tell you. It sounds like care, and that's what makes it so dangerous. It's a cage whose bars are made of your own common sense. It's a prison whose walls are built from reasonable concerns and practical considerations. You walk into it voluntarily because it seems like the safe choice, the smart choice, the mature choice. And you don't even realize you're locked in until years later, when you wonder why you can't reach the dreams you used to have. I walked out of that building feeling like a ghost, like I had died in that office, and what was walking down the corridor was just a shell going through the motions of living. The building itself seemed designed to reinforce this feeling. All chrome and glass and perfect right angles, the architecture of optimization, where every inefficiency had been designed out, including apparently the inefficiency of human dreams. The elevator ride down 32 floors was a compression chamber, each floor a layer of pressure being added to my chest. By the time I reached the lobby, I felt like I might shatter. The city, which had always seemed full of possibility to me, which had been my beacon since I was a teenager in a small town reading about Silicon Valley, the way medieval peasants must have read about Camelot, now just looked like a collection of hard, unyielding surfaces. The buildings were too tall, their windows too reflective, showing me nothing but distorted versions of myself. The sound of my heels on the pavement was a funeral march for a future that had never been born, a future I had carried inside me so tenderly, had nurtured with such care, and had just watched executed with 4 words. I made it 3 blocks before my vision blurred, 2 more before I had to stop, leaning against a wall in an alley, gasping for air that wouldn't come. A homeless man asked if I was okay. I gave him $20, all the cash I had, because his concern, genuine and simple, was the only human thing I had encountered all day. I cried for 3 days. Not the elegant, cinematic crying of movies where a single tear rolls down a perfectly made-up face and somehow makes you more beautiful. This was the ugly, gut-wrenching kind that leaves you hollowed out, that comes from somewhere deeper than sadness, from the place where hope lives or lived. It was the kind of crying that leaves your eyes swollen shut, that gives you a headache that feels like your skull is too small for your brain, that makes your body hurt in places you didn't know could hurt. I called in sick to my part-time job. I unplugged my phone. I closed the curtains and let the darkness have me. My roommate, Sarah, a PhD candidate in molecular biology who had her own dreams of revolutionizing cancer treatment, sat with me on the second night. She didn't offer advice or try to cheer me up. She just sat there, occasionally handing me water or tissues, being present in a way that reminded me that witnessing someone's pain is sometimes the most profound thing you can do for them. "He's wrong, you know," she finally said on the third day. "I don't understand half of what you're building, but I've seen you work on it. I've seen what it means to you. That kind of conviction isn't naive. It's the rarest thing in the world." I had placed my value in the hands of an external arbiter, and he had found me wanting. That was the crux of it. I had given Arthur Pemberton the power to determine not just whether my idea was good, but whether I was good enough. I had outsourced my sense of worth to someone who had spent 30 minutes with my work and a lifetime in a system that rewards a very specific kind of thinking. And that system's immune response to anything that didn't fit its parameters was to label it unrealistic. But then, something shifted. It was a quiet, philosophical rebellion that started in the ruins of my self-esteem. It happened on the fourth day when I finally opened my laptop again, not to work, but just to look at the files. Months of work, organized into folders with names like ethical framework, implementation architecture, user interface philosophy. I started reading through my own writing as if I were a stranger, trying to see what Arthur had seen, and you know what? I couldn't find what he saw. Yes, it was ambitious. Yes, it was complex. Yes, it would be hard to explain to investors who wanted to hear about monthly active users and customer acquisition costs. But it wasn't impossible. It wasn't naive. It was necessary. The more I read, the more I realize that the problem wasn't with my work. The problem was with the frame through which Arthur was viewing it. I began to deconstruct his statement, applying the same philosophical rigor to his advice that I had applied to my work. Stop dreaming big. Let's examine this proposition. What are its assumptions? What world does it emerge from? What are its implications? And most importantly, cui bono asterisk, who benefits? The answer, of course, was him. The established order, the gatekeepers. Their power is maintained not just by their own success, not just by their accumulated capital and networks and resources, but by their ability to dictate the scale of everyone else's ambitions. This was perhaps their most important power, and the one least examined. A world of small dreamers is a manageable world, a comfortable world, a world where disruption happens in controlled ways, where innovation is incremental, where the fundamental structures remain unchallenged. A world of small dreamers is a world where the people at the top stay at the top. His advice wasn't wisdom, it was a containment strategy. It was the immune system of the status quo responding to a threat. And the most insidious part was that he probably believed he was helping me. He had so thoroughly internalized the logic of the system that he couldn't see past it. He wasn't being cruel, he was being blind. And that's when I decided to build. Not just to prove him wrong. That's too small a fuel for a long journey. It burns out quickly and leaves you bitter and twisted. Your entire project becoming nothing more than an extended revenge fantasy. I knew people like that, people whose entire startups were middle fingers to former employers or dismissive professors, and they were universally miserable even when they succeeded, because revenge is a finite fuel. You cross that finish line, and then what? You've won the argument but lost years of your life to anger. No, I built to prove a philosophical point to myself, to reality itself. That a dream is not an ephemeral wisp of fantasy, not a childish wish that adults put away along with their toys. A real dream is a blueprint. It is the first draft of a future reality. It is the one piece of the universe that you, and only you, can will into existence. It is your specific, unrepeatable contribution to the story of what humanity becomes. Everything that exists was once just a thought in someone's mind. Every building, every piece of technology, every institution, every work of art. They all started as electrical impulses in human brains, dreams that someone took seriously enough to make real. The Wright brothers were told that human flight was impossible, not just by laypeople, but by scientists who had mathematical proofs. Breaking the sound barrier was theoretically impossible until someone did it. Computing machines that could fit in your pocket were science fiction until they weren't. The entire trajectory of human civilization is a story of impossible dreams made real through stubborn, unreasonable persistence. My apartment became my laboratory and my monastery, a space that served dual purposes in my transformation. It was a studio in a neighborhood that the real estate listings called emerging, and everyone who lived there called sketchy. 600 square feet, walls so thin I could hear my neighbors' entire lives, a window that looked out onto a brick wall. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was asterisk enough asterisk. I worked a menial data entry job to pay my rent, 40 hours a week converting physical documents into digital databases for a legal firm. It was mind-numbing work, the kind that requires just enough attention that you can't fully dissociate, but not enough to feel engaged. My supervisor, a man named Brad who wore too much cologne and had motivational posters in his office, would sometimes stop by my desk to tell me I had real potential to move up in the company, maybe become a supervisor myself in a few years. I would smile and thank him and feel like I was living in a different dimension from everyone around me. They saw a career path, I saw a temporary fuel source, they saw a job, I saw the price I was paying for freedom. Every 2 weeks, a paycheck would hit my account, and I would take out exactly what I needed for food and rent and infrastructure, internet, cloud computing credits, development tools. Everything else went into a savings account I called Escape Velocity. Because that's what I needed. Enough momentum to break free of the gravitational pull of conventional life. Every other waking hour was dedicated to the blueprint. I would come home from work at 5:30, eat something that could generously be called dinner, usually rice and beans, sometimes with an egg if I was feeling luxurious, and then work until 2 or 3 in the morning. Sleep for 4 hours, wake up, repeat. Weekends were 40-hour sprints. I had no social life, no Netflix binges, no scrolling through social media. Every minute was accounted for, every hour dedicated to building. I wasn't just coding. I was building a world, creating something that existed at the intersection of multiple disciplines, each of which took years to master. I would spend days wrestling with a single line of Kant's asterisk critique of pure reason asterisk, reading the same page over and over in different translations, the Norman Kemp Smith version, the Werner Pluhar version, the Paul Guyer and Alan Wood version, trying to extract the precise meaning, trying to understand exactly what he meant by the categorical imperative and how it could be translated into a computational form. How do you take act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law, and turn it into code? It's not just a matter of formal logic, though that's part of it. It's about understanding what Kant meant by will, by universality, by law. It's about grasping the entire architecture of his moral philosophy, and then finding the isomorphic structure in computational systems. I'd lie on my floor, staring at the ceiling that had water stains in the shape of continents, mapping out the synaptic pathways of the human brain against the logic gates of my system. The human brain is not a computer, despite what reductive computational theorists claim. It doesn't work through discrete operations and clear separations between hardware and software. It's a messy, wet, electrochemical system where cognition and emotion are inseparable, where reason emerges from feeling, where abstract thought is grounded in embodied experience. But there are patterns. There are structures that, while not identical, are asterisk analogous asterisk. The way neurons form assemblies to represent concepts, is not entirely unlike the way nodes in a neural network form connections. The way the brain uses feedback loops to adjust its models is computational in a broad sense. The challenge was finding the right level of abstraction, the right way to translate between biological intelligence and artificial intelligence without losing something essential in the translation. The whiteboards on my walls weren't just covered in diagrams, they were covered in my own blood, sweat, and tears, metaphorically speaking, though there was also literally blood from when I punched the wall in frustration and tore my knuckles open on a nail, and literally sweat because my apartment had no air conditioning and San Francisco was having a heat wave, and literally tears because some nights the sheer magnitude of what I was trying to do would overwhelm me and I would cry while writing code, my vision blurring, having to stop and wipe my eyes every few minutes just to see the screen. They were the external manifestation of my internal reconstruction. I was building two things simultaneously: the system and a new version of myself. The person who had walked out of Arthur's office was broken. The person I was becoming was forged, and forging requires fire and hammering and the repeated application of force to transform the structure of the material itself. There's a profound loneliness in building something that no one else can yet see. It's a form of madness, but a chosen one. You are a prophet in the desert, and your only congregation is your own stubborn belief. You can't really explain what you're doing to people. My parents would call, and my mother would ask how things were going, and I'd say good, still working on my project. And I could hear the concern in her voice, the unspoken question, asterisk, when are you going to get a real job? Asterisk, my father, more direct, asked me once if I had considered seeing a therapist. You're obsessed, Ellie, he said. It's not healthy. But what is obsession except love focused to a laser point? What is madness except sanity taken to its logical extreme? The world calls you crazy when you see what they can't see. The world called Van Gogh crazy. It called Tesla crazy. It called every visionary crazy until their vision became reality. And then suddenly they were geniuses. They were ahead of their time. They were brilliant. But in the moment when you're in it, you're just crazy. The Western cultural narrative loves the idea of the garage startup, the mythology of the founder who works 100 hour weeks in impossible conditions and emerges with something world-changing. We have our saints, Jobs and Wozniak in their garage, Bezos packing books, Zuckerberg in his dorm room. But this narrative sanitizes the profound psychological toll. It shows you the montage, quick cuts of working late, drinking Red Bull, code on screens, set to inspiring music. It doesn't show you the actual texture of that experience. It doesn't show you the nights of despair when you're absolutely convinced you're deluding yourself, that Arthur was right, that you've wasted months or years of your life on something that will never work. It doesn't show you the physical degradation, the weight loss or weight gain, the persistent headaches, the way your hands start to shake from too much caffeine, the insomnia that becomes so chronic you forget what it feels like to actually feel rested. It doesn't show you the opportunity cost, the weddings you don't attend, the friendships that atrophy, the relationship that ends because you don't have room in your life for both your dream and another person. It doesn't show you the moments where his voice would echo in my head, "Stop dreaming big," and I would have to physically shake it out, literally shaking my head like a dog shaking off water, shouting back at the empty room, "No, no, no," like an exorcism, like I was trying to cast out a demon that had taken up residence in my skull. I was not building in spite of him. I was building because his words had revealed a fundamental truth to me. The biggest dreams are often the most fragile in their infancy, and the world is filled with people whose primary function is to perform a reality check that is, in fact, a reality reduction. They mistake the map for the territory. They see the current landscape of what is possible and believe it is the only landscape that can ever exist. They are cartographers who think their maps define reality rather than describe it. But dreamers are the cartographers of unseen worlds. We map territories that don't yet exist. We chart courses to destinations that are currently nowhere. And the only way those places come into being is if someone is crazy enough to believe in them before there's any evidence they're real. I found others like me scattered across the internet. We formed a small community, never more than 7 or 8 people, meeting in video calls at odd hours because we were spread across time zones and all working around day jobs. There was Raj in Bangalore, building a natural language system that could understand poetry the way humans do, not just parsing grammar, but feeling the emotional resonance. There was Amara in Nairobi, working on an AI that could understand cultural context, that could recognize that the same gesture or phrase means different things in different cultures. There was Chen in Beijing, who had to use a VPN to join our calls, working on something he couldn't fully describe because of state security concerns. But that had something to do with giving AI systems genuine curiosity. We were all misfits, all working on problems that our respective industries had declared either solved or irrelevant. We would share our progress, our setbacks, our doubts. We formed a support group for people building impossible things. And slowly, very slowly, our impossible things started to work. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday at 3:47 a.m. I had been working for 19 straight hours, my eyes burning, my back screaming in protest, running yet another simulation of how my ethical framework would handle a classic moral dilemma. The trolley problem, but with layers of complexity. Not just do you pull the lever, but how do you reason about the decision? What principles do you apply? How do you weigh competing values? How do you deal with uncertainty about the outcomes? And suddenly, watching the decision tree unfold on my screen, seeing how the system was reasoning through the problem, I saw it. The thing I had been trying to build for 2 years. It wasn't just following rules. It was understanding them. It was grasping the underlying principles and applying them to novel situations. It wasn't artificial intelligence in the narrow sense. It was artificial wisdom, or at least the beginning of it. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. My upstairs neighbor pounded on the floor. It was almost 4 a.m. and I was being loud. I didn't care. I had done it. It worked. It actually worked. The next 6 months were a blur of refinement, testing, breaking, fixing, testing again. I recruited beta users from online philosophy forums, from AI ethics groups, from anywhere I could find people who understood what I was trying to do. The feedback was extraordinary. People got it. They saw what I saw. They understood that this wasn't just another AI tool. It was a new paradigm for how AI could work. I started writing papers, submitting them to conferences. The first 3 were rejected. The reviewers called my work philosophically sophisticated but practically unproven, or interesting in theory but lacking empirical validation. The 4th was accepted to a small workshop at a 2nd-tier conference. I presented to an audience of 23 people. 19 of them looked bored or confused. But 4 of them got it, and one of those 4 was a professor at MIT who invited me to present at a larger conference. That presentation led to another and another. Slowly, very slowly, I was building credibility, getting a foothold in the academic world that ran parallel to the commercial world that Arthur inhabited. I was taking the long way around, building from the bottom up instead of the top down. The day everything changed started unremarkably. I was in a coffee shop, one of those third-wave places where they take coffee so seriously it borders on parody, where the barista will tell you the name of the farm your beans came from and the altitude at which they were grown. I had just given a presentation at Stanford, and it had gone well, about 60 people in attendance, good questions, several business cards exchanged. I was tired but satisfied, drinking my single origin pour-over that cost $8 when my phone buzzed. An email, the subject line, Investment Inquiry ETHA Framework. I almost deleted it. I got emails like this occasionally, usually from small time investors who had seen one of my talks, most of whom wanted to hop on a quick call. That turned into an hour of them explaining why I needed to pivot my entire approach. But something made me open it. The sender was Rebecca Chen, a name I recognized immediately. She was a partner at Threshold Ventures, one of the most respected early-stage VC firms in the Valley. She had led the Series A for 3 companies that had gone on to become household names. She was, in other words, the real deal. The email was short. Dr. Ashworth, I saw your presentation at Stanford yesterday. I think you're building something important. Let's talk. When are you free? Asterisk Dr. Ashworth. Asterisk I had just finished my PhD. I'd enrolled part-time while building ETHA, a grueling experience that I don't recommend to anyone who values their sanity. But I had done it because I knew that credibility in my field required those letters before my name. The dissertation had been based on my work, obviously, and defending it had been one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. But I had passed, and I had my doctorate, and apparently Rebecca had done her homework. We met the next week in her office, which was the opposite of Arthur's. Where his had been all aggressive masculinity and displays of wealth, hers was understated, comfortable, human, scaled. There were plans. There were actual books, not just leather-bound decorations. There were photos of what I assumed were her family. It felt like a place where real conversations happened. She got straight to the point. I'm not going to waste your time with small talk. I've read everything you've published. I've looked at your patents. Yes, I saw you've filed 3 provisional patents. Smart move. I've talked to people in the AI ethics space, and your name keeps coming up. I think you're on to something that could be genuinely transformative. I waited for the but. It didn't come. I want to lead your seed round. I'm thinking we raise $3 million that should give you 18 to 24 months of runway to build out a team and get to a functional beta that we can start putting in front of enterprise customers. I have thoughts about go-to-market strategy. Fundamentally, this is your vision, and I'm not interested in changing it. I'm interested in helping you realize it. I sat there, stunned. This was the conversation I had imagined having with Arthur 3 years ago. The one where someone saw what I saw, where I didn't have to justify the philosophical foundation, where the ambition was treated as an asset rather than a liability. Why? I asked. Why this? Why me? Why now? Rebecca smiled. Because I invest in inflection points, points where the trajectory of an entire field can change, and I think you've found one. The entire AI industry is optimizing for capability-making systems that can do more, do it faster, do it cheaper. You're one of the only people asking whether they should do it at all and building systems that can grapple with that question. That's not a nice to have. As AI systems become more powerful, that becomes essential. You're not building a vitamin. You're building a painkiller for a pain that people don't fully feel yet, but will soon. That meeting led to 3 months of the most intensive due diligence I could have imagined. Rebecca introduced me to her partners, who grilled me on technical specifics. She brought in external experts to assess the work. She had her analysts build market models, and through it all, the fundamental vision never wavered. She got it. They got it. We closed the seed round with Rebecca leading, and 2 other top-tier VC joining. $3 million. It felt like $3 billion. It felt like validation in its purest form, not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented. Smart, experienced people betting that I was right and Arthur was wrong. I hired carefully, turning down people with impressive resumes in favor of people who understood the mission. My first hire was Amara from our late-night working group. She moved from Nairobi to San Francisco, and we celebrated by ordering pizza and working until dawn in our new office. A small space in a shared building, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Then Raj, who had just finished his master's at IIT. Then Chen, who managed to get out of China by accepting a position at our growing company. then a brilliant ethicist from Oxford who had written her dissertation on machine morality, then a user experience designer who had previously worked in hospice care and understood how to design for complex human needs. We grew slowly, deliberately. After another year, we raised our Series A $12 million, led again by Rebecca. By this point, we had 3 pilot customers, all of whom were reporting extraordinary results. An autonomous vehicle company using our framework to navigate ethical decisions in unavoidable accident scenarios. A healthcare AI using it to support clinical decision-making while respecting patient autonomy and competing values. A content moderation system that could understand not just what was harmful, but why it was harmful, and make nuanced decisions about context. The industry started to notice. We were getting written up in tech journals, academic journals, mainstream media. I was getting invited to speak at major conferences, and one of those conferences was Tech Future Global, the biggest AI conference in the world. The invitation came with a note: "We'd like you to deliver a keynote, 1-hour main stage, title, Rethinking AI, a philosophical framework for the next generation. Let us know if you're interested." I checked the conference schedule. Arthur Pemberton was scheduled to give the opening keynote the day before mine. I accepted. The day of the launch, or rather, the days leading up to it, were an exercise in managing terror disguised as excitement. Our team had grown to 23 people, every one of whom had worked impossibly hard to get us to this moment. We were launching not just as a presentation, but as a platform. After my keynote, Etha would be publicly available in beta, open to developers who wanted to integrate genuine ethical reasoning into their AI systems. This wasn't just a talk. This was us stepping into the arena and saying, "Here it is, judge for yourself." I had practiced the presentation hundreds of times. I had rehearsed every transition, every joke, every pause. I had backup plans for technical failures, contingencies for contingencies. My co-founder, Amara, had finally told me to stop, that I was going to over-rehearse myself into woodenness. "You know this material better than anyone alive," she said. "Just talk about it like you talk to us. That's all you need to do." The morning of the keynote, I woke up at 5 a.m. with a clarity I had never known. Not calm exactly. My heart was racing, but clear. I knew what I needed to do. I put on the outfit I had chosen weeks ago. Not the typical startup founder uniform of jeans and a blazer, but a dress that I had found in a vintage store, deep blue with subtle geometric patterns, something that felt both professional and unapologetically myself. I wanted to walk on that stage as exactly who I was, not who I thought the tech world wanted me to be. I arrived at the conference center 3 hours early. The main auditorium was massive, built for 3,000 people. The stage was a sleek black platform with LED screens that wrapped around in a semicircle. The lighting rig looked like something from a rock concert. This was not a university lecture hall or a small workshop. This was the big leagues. I did a sound check, walked the stage, felt the space. The tech crew were consummate professionals walking me through the setup, making sure my laptop was connected properly, that my slides would advance, that the live demo was ready to go. Everything was perfect. Everything was terrifying. And then, an hour before doors opened, I saw him walk in. Arthur Pemberton, entering through a side door with an entourage, 2 assistants, someone who was probably from the conference organization, a photographer. He was older than I remembered, grayer, but he carried himself with the same unshakable confidence. He was scanning the space, making mental notes, preparing for his own talk even though he had given it yesterday. He was always preparing, always optimizing. He didn't see me. I was standing in the shadows stage left, just watching. Part of me wanted to walk over to introduce myself to see if he would remember me. But I didn't. This wasn't about him. It couldn't be about him. If I made it about him, I would lose. The doors opened. People flooded in. The front rows filled up first. Always the most engaged audience members, the ones who come early for good seats. Then the middle, then the back. I watched from backstage as the auditorium filled, hundreds and then thousands of people, all here ostensibly to learn about advances in AI, but really here to see and be seen, to network, to feel like they were part of the conversation shaping the future. And then I saw him again, Arthur, now with a larger group, being escorted to a reserved section in the third row. Prime seating. He was laughing at something someone said, completely at ease. This was his world. These were his people. 10 minutes to showtime. The conference organizer, an energetic woman named Patricia, came backstage. Dr. Ashworth, we have a full house. There's overflow in 2 other rooms watching via video. This is one of the most anticipated talks of the conference. Are you ready? Was I ready? I had been preparing for this moment for 4 years. For the 18 months I spent building the initial framework alone. For the 2 years since funding, building the company. For the countless nights of doubt and revision and breakthrough. For every person who had told me I was too ambitious, too theoretical, too impractical. I'm ready. I said. The lights in the auditorium dimmed. Patricia walked out to introduce me. She kept it brief. My credentials, my company, the significance of what we were unveiling. And then, please welcome Dr. Eloise Ashworth. I walked onto the stage, and the spotlight wasn't blinding. It was illuminating. It felt like the light I had been trying to find within myself for years, suddenly externalized, suddenly real. The applause was substantial, enthusiastic. I took my place at center stage, looked out at the sea of faces, found my team sitting together in the 5th row, all of them giving me thumbs up or grinning. I found Rebecca, who nodded once, a gesture that contained within it all her confidence in me, and I found Arthur. Our eyes met. He didn't recognize me, not yet. Good morning, I began. I want to start with a question that might seem more appropriate for a philosophy seminar than a tech conference. What is the good life? I let the question hang. I could see some confusion in the audience, some people shifting in their seats. This wasn't how tech talks usually started, but I had their attention. Aristotle spent much of the Nicomachean Ethics grappling with this question. His answer eudaimonia human flourishing, has echoed through 2,500 years of Western thought. He argued that the good life isn't about pleasure or wealth or even happiness in the conventional sense. It's about living in accordance with virtue, about actualizing your potential, about becoming the best version of what a human being can be. Another pause. I advanced to the next slide, a quote from Aristotle. Now you might be wondering why I'm starting an AI keynote with ancient Greek philosophy. Here's why. Every AI system we build is, whether we acknowledge it or not, making assumptions about what humans want, what they value, what constitutes a good outcome, and most of those systems are built on an impoverished philosophy, a crude utilitarianism that equates good with optimized and optimized with more. More engagement, more clicks, more purchases, more efficiency. I was warming up now, finding my rhythm. The audience was with me. I could feel it. 4 years ago, I sat in an office with a mentor I deeply respected, and I presented him with an idea. What if we built AI systems with a genuine philosophical foundation? What if we gave them frameworks for ethical reasoning that drew on 2,500 years of moral philosophy? What if we taught them not just to compute, but to comprehend? I advanced to the next slide. It showed the core architecture of Ether in a simplified form. Beautiful, complex, coherent. He told me to stop dreaming so big. The room was silent now. This was not going the way anyone expected. He told me that the market doesn't care about Spinoza, that investors aren't interested in funding a philosophy seminar, that I should get a real job, and maybe, in 20 years, I could revisit this impractical dream. I looked directly at Arthur. His face had gone pale. He recognized me now. I want to thank that mentor, actually, because he taught me something crucial. When someone tells you your dream is too big, they're not making a statement about the dream. They're revealing the limits of their imagination. They're telling you exactly how high they can see, and mistaking their ceiling for the sky. The audience was transfixed. This was not a typical product launch. So I built it anyway. I built it in a studio apartment while working a data entry job. I built it through 3 years of rejection and doubt and crushing loneliness. I built it because I believed. No, because I knew that the future of AI can't be just about capability. It has to be about wisdom. And here's what I learned. The impossible takes exactly as long as you're willing to work on it. I spent the next 45 minutes taking them through Etha, not just the what, but the how and why. I showed them how Kantian deontology could be formalized into decision rules, how Aristotelian virtue ethics could guide learning algorithms toward optimal character traits, how phenomenology could help systems understand human intentionality, how care ethics could make AI systems responsive to context and relationship. But I didn't just theorize, I demonstrated, live on stage with actual use cases, the autonomous vehicle dilemma resolved through sophisticated moral reasoning, the healthcare decision that balanced patient autonomy with medical benefit, the content moderation case that understood context and nuance instead of just pattern matching. The audience was silent, absorbed. This wasn't just interesting, it was transformative. They could see it. The applications were immediate and profound. This isn't just a research project anymore, I said, building to the conclusion. As of today, Etha is available in open beta. Any developer can integrate this framework into their AI systems. We're releasing the core as open source, with enterprise tools available for companies that need additional support. Because this can't be proprietary, this has to be a common good. The ethical foundation of AI can't be owned, it has to be shared. The applause started before I finished the sentence. It built like a wave, people rising to their feet, the sound overwhelming. I stood there, letting it wash over me, feeling vindicated and humbled and overwhelmed all at once. As the applause continued, I looked at Arthur. He was sitting perfectly still while everyone around him stood and clapped. Our eyes met across the auditorium, and in that moment, there was no victory, no revenge, no satisfaction in his discomfort. There was only truth. The truth that he had been wrong, not just about my idea, but about the very nature of ambition itself. The truth that the castle I had built in the sky was standing firm, its flags flying, proof that dreams don't need to be smaller to be real. They need to be bigger than the imagination of those who doubt them. He left before the Q&A. I heard later he told a colleague it was the most disruptive thing he'd ever seen. He meant it as a compliment in our industry, but I think he meant it in a more literal, personal sense. It had disrupted his worldview. It had cracked the certainty with which he moved through the world. And while I don't know this for certain, I suspect it haunted him, the way you're haunted by the road not taken, by the decision you got wrong, by the person whose potential you failed to see. The weeks after the launch were a controlled chaos. We had anticipated maybe a few thousand signups for the beta in the first month. We got 47,000 in the first week. Our servers nearly collapsed. We had to emergency scale our infrastructure, bring on additional engineers, set up support systems for the flood of developers who wanted to integrate Etha into their projects. The media coverage was extraordinary. Wired ran a feature, The Philosopher Who Taught AI to Care. The New York Times did a profile, Ethics by Design, How One Woman is Reimagining Artificial Intelligence. TechCrunch Etha's open beta sees unprecedented adoption in AI ethics space. Even The Atlantic weighed in with a longer piece about whether philosophy had a place in Silicon Valley. We raised our Series B 3 months later. $60 million at a valuation that made me feel like I was living in someone else's life. Rebecca stayed on the board. We brought on 2 additional partners from top-tier firms. The team grew to 75 people. We opened a second office in London, a third in Singapore. Etha was being integrated into systems across dozens of industries: healthcare, autonomous vehicles, financial services, education, criminal justice, content platforms. But the thing I'm most proud of isn't the growth or the funding or the media attention. It's the letters. I get emails every day from people, developers, researchers, ethicists, regular people who have encountered systems built on Ether, telling me that it's making a difference. That they can see the difference between an AI that optimizes and an AI that comprehends. That they feel respected by these systems in a way they don't by other AI. One letter in particular stands out. It was from a doctor in rural Montana who was using our healthcare decision support system. She wrote, "For years, I've felt like medical AI was pushing me toward efficiency at the expense of care. Optimize the number of patients seen, minimize the time per interaction. Your system is different. It understands that medicine is about more than outcomes. It's about the patient's experience, their dignity, their values. Last week, it helped me navigate a complex end-of-life decision with a patient's family. It didn't tell me what to do. It helped me think through the ethical dimensions, helped me ask the right questions, helped me honor what the patient would have wanted. That's not artificial intelligence. That's artificial wisdom. Thank you for building it." That letter is framed in my office. People often think this is a revenge story. It is not. Revenge is a small dream. Revenge is about proving someone wrong, which means that someone is still the center of your narrative, still the sun around which your planet orbits. If I had built Ether to prove Arthur wrong, it would have collapsed the moment I succeeded, because its purpose would have been fulfilled. No, this is a story about the physics of the soul. An object at rest, like a dormant dream, will remain at rest unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Arthur was that force. His dismissal was the push that set me in motion. But Newton's first law has a second part. An object in motion stays in motion. Once I was building, once I had momentum, I didn't need him anymore. The dream took on its own gravity, its own trajectory. And an object in motion, a person truly committed to their blueprint, will stay in motion, building, growing, until they create a reality so vast it can encompass even the memory of that initial pain. The pain doesn't disappear. I still remember exactly how it felt to hear those words, but it gets absorbed into something larger. It becomes part of the foundation, part of the structure that holds everything up. I saw Arthur one more time, about a year after the launch. It was at a small dinner for people in the AI space, one of those intimate gatherings that happens on the margins of larger conferences. He approached me during the cocktail hour. "Eloise," he said, "I've been hoping to run into you. I wanted to say, I was wrong about your idea about you. I didn't see it, and I should have. It was a generous apology, a real one. I appreciated it." "Thank you," I said. "That means something. Can I ask you a question?" He said. "How did you do it? How did you keep going after everyone? After I told you it wouldn't work?" I thought about it for a moment. I realized that when people tell you to be realistic, they're not describing reality. They're describing their reality, their limitations, their fears. Reality itself is far more elastic than most people think. It bends toward the people who refuse to accept its supposed boundaries. He nodded slowly. "I think I've been making dreams smaller my whole career, telling people to be practical, to take the sure path. I thought I was being helpful." "You probably were," I said. "For most people do need practical advice, but not everyone. Some people need to hear the opposite. Some people need permission to be unreasonable." He smiled, a sad smile. "I'm glad you didn't need my permission." We talked for a few more minutes, cordial and professional, and then we went our separate ways. I don't harbor any ill will toward him. He was doing what he thought was right, what his experience had taught him. He was a product of a system that rewards incremental thinking and punishes risk. You can't blame water for being wet. But I do think about that interaction sometimes, about the broader implications. How many Arthur Pembertons are there in the world? How many gatekeepers? Well, meaning or otherwise, who function as dream reducers. How many brilliant people have been convinced to think smaller, to be more realistic, to wait 20 years? How many castles in the sky were never built because someone said they were impossible? And conversely, how many of those people could have succeeded if they had simply refused to accept that verdict? If they had treated the skepticism not as wisdom but as data, information about the skeptic's limitations, not the dream's feasibility. This is what I've come to believe. There are two types of big dreams. There are fantasies, wishes disconnected from reality, desires without plans, visions without blueprints. Those should be questioned. Those do need reality checks. But then there are visions, dreams with architecture, ambitions with strategy, impossibilities that are really just improbabilities that no one's solved yet. Those don't need to be smaller. Those need to be protected, nurtured, pursued with unreasonable persistence. The trick is knowing which type you have, and the way you know is by doing the work. Fantasies collapse when you start building. Visions solidify. So I say to you, and by you I mean anyone reading this who has a dream that someone has told them is too big. If anyone ever tells you to make your dreams smaller, do not argue with them. Do not get angry. Do not try to convince them. They cannot see what you see, and that's not a failure on your part or theirs. It's just a fact. Thank them. Thank them sincerely, because they have just handed you the precise measurement of their own limitations. And that measurement is valuable. It tells you exactly what you're up against. It tells you how big the gap is between their vision and yours. It tells you how much work you have to do to turn something they can't imagine into something they can't ignore. And then, quietly, relentlessly, systematically, use that measurement as the foundation for something so grand. It redefines the very scale of what is possible. Here's what I've learned about building impossible things. Asterisk asterisk first. Dreams require translation. Asterisk asterisk, your vision exists in your head in a form that makes perfect sense to you. But to build it, you have to translate it into multiple languages, into code, into business models, into pitches, into prototypes. Every translation loses something and gains something. The art is in maintaining the essence while adapting the form. Asterisk asterisk second. Loneliness is the price of admission. Asterisk asterisk, there will be a period, maybe months, maybe years, where you are the only person who believes in what you're building. You have to be okay with that. You have to develop a relationship with solitude, not as a burden, but as a condition. The loneliness isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the necessary isolation that allows something genuinely new to emerge. Asterisk asterisk third, criticism is information, not verdict. Asterisk asterisk, when someone criticizes your dream, they're giving you data. Sometimes the data is about a real flaw you need to address. More often, the data is about them, their assumptions, their experiences, their blind spots. Learn to distinguish between useful feedback and projected limitation. Asterisk asterisk fourth, momentum is everything. Asterisk asterisk, the hardest part of building something big is starting. The second hardest is keeping going when progress is invisible. But if you can maintain momentum, even slow momentum, the compound interest of consistent work becomes extraordinary. A small amount of progress every day for 1,000 days is a revolution. Asterisk asterisk fifth, you need allies but not permission. Asterisk asterisk, find people who see what you see, or who trust you enough to help you build something they don't fully understand yet. But don't wait for permission from gatekeepers. Gatekeepers exist to maintain the status quo. They're structurally incapable of endorsing genuine disruption. Asterisk asterisk sixth, the dream has to be bigger than your ego. Asterisk asterisk, if you're building something big to prove you're smart, or to show up someone who dismissed you, or to become famous, you will fail. Not because those motivations are bad, but because they're not strong enough. They'll sustain you for a year, maybe two, But building something genuinely transformative takes longer than your ego can fuel. The dream has to matter beyond your need for validation. Asterisk asterisk seventh, you will be misunderstood, and that's okay. Asterisk asterisk, in fact, if everyone immediately understands what you're building, you're probably not building something genuinely new. The cutting edge is, by definition, ahead of common understanding. Be patient with the incomprehension. Keep building. The understanding will come, but only after the thing exists. Asterisk asterisk eighth, celebrate small wins. Asterisk asterisk, the gap between where you are and where you want to be can be psychologically devastating. You have to train yourself to see progress in small increments. The day you solve a problem you've been wrestling with for months is a win, even if no one else knows or cares. The day you get a feature working is a win. The day you convince one person to believe in your vision is a win. These small wins are the fuel that keeps you going. Asterisk asterisk ninth, protect your vision but hold it lightly. Asterisk asterisk, there's a paradox here. You have to be absolutely committed to the core of your vision, the essence that makes it matter. But you also have to be flexible about the implementation, the path, the specific form it takes. Stubbornness about the destination, flexibility about the route. Asterisk asterisk tenth, the world needs people who think big. Asterisk asterisk, we have plenty of incrementalists, plenty of people making small improvements to existing systems. That's valuable work. But the big leaps, the paradigm shifts, the genuine transformations, those only come from people who are willing to be unreasonable, impractical, naive. The world needs its dreamers, even when it tries to suppress them. The greatest tragedy is not aiming for the stars and missing. The greatest tragedy is not aiming at all. It's being told the sky is the limit and believing it. It's accepting someone else's ceiling as your own. It's dying with your biggest dreams still inside you, unrealized, because you were convinced they were unrealistic. Arthur told me to stop dreaming big, so I built a reality bigger than his imagination. And in doing so, I discovered something. The size of your dreams is the size of your life. Not the life you live externally, the money, the recognition, the conventional markers of success, but the life you live internally. The richness of your inner experience, the scope of what you believe is possible, the magnitude of your contribution to the story of humanity. Small dreams make small lives, not small in achievement. You can succeed spectacularly at a small dream, but small in significance. Small dreams are safe. They fit inside the existing structures. They don't threaten anyone. They're comfortable. Big dreams make big lives. Even if you fail, especially if you fail, you live a bigger existence. You spend your days in conversation with possibility itself. You push against the boundaries of what is and try to expand them toward what could be. You might fail. Probably you will fail if we're honest about the odds. But you will fail at something magnificent. And that magnificence transforms you even in defeat. I think about the alternate timelines sometimes. The one where I listened to Arthur, where I got a job at Google or DeepMind, where I learned the ropes and waited 20 years. Maybe in that timeline, I'm successful by conventional standards. Maybe I'm a VP somewhere, making good money, doing good work on incremental improvements to existing systems. Maybe I'm happy, but I wouldn't be this asterisk happy. I wouldn't have this sense of alignment, this feeling that my life is expressing something essential about who I am. I wouldn't have built something that might actually shift the trajectory of how AI develops. I wouldn't have proven to myself that the impossible is just the possible in disguise, waiting for someone stubborn enough to reveal it. It's been 5 years since the launch. Etha is now integrated into systems used by over 2 billion people worldwide. We're no longer a startup. We're an established company, 300 employees, offices on 4 continents. I'm no longer a scrappy founder working in a studio apartment. I'm a CEO who has to think about organizational structure and HR policies and quarterly earnings. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of those early days, the clarity of purpose when it was just me and a dream and a laptop. But I wouldn't go back, because the dream has taken on a life of its own now. It's bigger than me, it doesn't need me in the same way anymore, and that's how you know you've built something real, when it can stand without you. I still get emails from people telling me that someone told them to think smaller. They ask me for advice. I tell them what I've learned. The advice to think smaller is almost always wrong, but in a useful way. It's wrong about your dream, but it's right about how much work it will be. It's wrong about what's possible, but it's right about what's comfortable. It's wrong about your potential, but it's right about the odds. So take the advice seriously, but not literally. Take it as a measurement of the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Then do the math, calculate what it would take to cross that distance. Build a blueprint, start building. And when people tell you it's impossible, smile and thank them for their opinion and keep building. Because castles in the sky can be real, if you're willing to do the engineering. Asterisk, the greatest revolution is expanding what's considered possible. Not through argument, but through existence. Not through persuasion, but through proof. Build the future they say can't exist, and watch as their impossibility becomes the world's new normal. Asterisk, asterisk, dream so big it frightens you. Then build it anyway. The fear is just the growing pains of your vision exceeding your current capacity. You'll grow into it. Asterisk, asterisk, your dream is not too big. Their vision is too small. Know the difference and build accordingly. Asterisk.